All right, welcome everyone to Holistically Manage Your Finances. I know it's a bit of a different concept, really. The idea of how to manage finances in a holistic way, and it's the way I operate is very much mind, body, soul, all of that kind of trying to blend it together because it all impacts everything. The way we're feeling, the thoughts that we're having, all of that kind of comes together. So I'll go through a little bit of the mindset and then also focus on business finances and personal finances because working with small business owners, which is what I primarily do, I find when you only look at one part of the financial puzzle, the other part gets missed. And the principles are actually quite similar. So I will bring up the presentation, which information I'll go through. So my name is Alpha. And I'll just go through a little bit more about myself as well. And I'm just trying to see if I can, I can't seem to see people well enough when I do presentation, especially, and can you see my screen?
Yes.
You can see it?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay. All right, good. I'll just go back to the presentation because I can't see you when I have the presentation going. So I'll just go back to that. All right. So my name is Alpha. That is my real name. And I started out in corporate tax, actually. Actually, originally I studied marketing, and I loved the idea of working with clients. And I wanted to work in the consulting space, and I ended up down the accounting path. And I loved working with clients, but I didn't necessarily enjoy the tax legal part of it. And then I morphed off into different areas. So I worked in management consulting, and I worked with a small business who was consulting to mining companies for a while. But a lot of what I did was finance based. And as I was going through that sort of professional journey, then my own personal finance journey sort of started to evolve. Because you get a bit older, when you're in the beginning, you don't really have the money to kind of worry about future and financial planning. And as I got to, I was heading into my 30s, and I thought, oh, I really need to kind of know what I'm doing here.
Can I interrupt?
Yes.
Payal, you may not have seen her message, but Payal said she can't see the presentation.
Can't see the presentation. Okay. Let me see. I'm trying to figure out why that might be. I'll stop.
She just had it.
Hang on. I'll do this. Is that better? Can you see that now?
Payal,
Can you see the presentation now? Yes. Okay, great. Sorry, I think I had it on the wrong screen. I don't understand because I've only got my laptop connected, so deliberately so that I didn't have that problem. But thank you very much. Sorry for that. I will go present again. I haven't usually, because if that happens to me, I generally only have one screen going, which I don't quite know why that happened. Anyway, you can see it now. That's great. So I'll just go back to here. So yeah, so a little bit of that. So as I was getting a bit older, I had some money behind me, and I thought, oh, I should know how to do this. I've worked in this space before. I should know how to manage money, but I didn't. And it's interesting because we don't actually get taught how to manage money, and it's very much it's a really interesting one. It's actually quite an emotive topic, money, because when we have a certain level of intellect and we learn a certain amount in our lives, there's this kind of assumption that, oh, we should just know how to manage money. But then there's so much information that comes our way, and there's so many different ways to do it that it almost, to be honest, gets overcomplicated to the point where we just do nothing because it's too hard to try and figure out where to start. So I started by, I was talking with a friend one day, and she mentioned a financial planner. So I was like, oh, okay, great. So I actually started working with that financial planner. And after about 6 months, I started to have these niggling feeling that it wasn't really I had a lot of questions anyway. So I actually started to do the diploma of financial planning because I thought I want to know more about this. And I actually really like figures. Didn't always, to be honest. At school, humanities was more my area of sort of interest. But I've come to enjoy figures and I'm quite an organized person, and I find figures sort of just tend to make sense in that space. And so the journey kind of went in that direction. As I was learning, and I was like, there's so much we don't know. How, like, more people need to know this. So I actually started out with just a personal finance online course. And what I realized is not everybody actually wants to know. So when I started to do more consulting with individuals, I found that everyone I was working with was a female small business owner. And again, they were struggling with, they had their zone of genius where they wanted to do the thing that they wanted to do, but they wanted the finances to work as well. And by relying purely on accountants and bookkeepers, they weren't getting the kind of information that they needed. Some accountants and bookkeepers will do it, others won't. And they don't even know what to ask either. So I ended up on this journey where it's evolved, and it's meant that my daughter, I now have, she's now 8, she was 6 in that photo, has been on the journey as well, and she's learning about money. I think the value of money is still not quite there, but we'll get there. So it's now been something I'd like, I want that future impact as well. And that's another reason why I love working with women, because we have that more holistic view of the impact on our families as well, not just ourselves. So that's sort of what motivates me to do what I do. And today, why I've chosen holistically managing money is because, again, I see people might look at, if they start to look at money, they'll look at pieces of it. And it doesn't necessarily get to the point where you look at the whole picture. And you can look at bits and pieces, but eventually you have to kind of have that broader view. So we're going to start with vision, because unless we know where we're going, and we might not necessarily have perfect clarity in that, but we still have to have an idea of where we're headed, because that then impacts the goals that we set in motion and the actions we take around those. And they're often impacted by the stories we tell ourselves. So part of looking at your vision and your goals is challenging the money stories that we tell ourselves and that we tell others as well, because it's amazing, the repartee. Anyway, we'll get into that in a moment. I'll get ahead of myself otherwise. And then we're going to look at how to align managing your money and your cash flow in particular between your business and personal finances. And then we're going to look at ways to simplify all of that and automate as much as you can. Automation is a great tool. Technology has enabled that substantially, but it's not always possible. There's ways to manually automate as much as possible, but at least have the structures and the processes set up to help to support that. So first, we'll get into clarity. I'm a big fan of clarity. It's one of the first things, when you think about, as children, we ask the word why. The question is why. So why do we want something? And this is what we don't often take the time to take a step back out of our lives, look around us and go, okay, why do I want? What do I want? Why do I want it? And is what I have around me going to help me get there right now? Quite often the answer is no. The amount of times I've had clients where they're like, I don't know why we bought such a big house, or I don't know why we bought such an expensive car. It's like, quite often we'll kind of follow the trends of what's around us and what we see and the advertisements and all of this underlying messaging that we get through advertising and social media and all of that. And we have this sort of perception of what we think we want, but is it what we really want? Which is one of the reasons I love seeing this whole kind of tiny homes movement that started. And I went to an expo last year, and it was really, they're quite amazing, and they're very livable. And there's one lady at the moment I follow on Instagram, and she's got a deck. She's managed to make a little like plunge pool as well. So you can fashion the life that you want for you, not what you think you want or what others think you should have or what family members expect, because there's a lot of cultural aspects to that as well, and the level of expectation can sometimes feel very heavy. So starting with that vision, and there are ways to create that. I won't go into detail about that today, but there's a process that I've created for how to help understand what that vision is. And from that, you can start to make goals. And goals are important, especially in business, when you want to understand, well, where am I now? Where do I want to be? And that's linked to the vision, because you need to understand how much money you need to support that vision. And then your goals can incrementally help you get there. So that clarity is really key. And then from those goals, you need to be able to have a plan, things to be able to do step by step, and to prioritize it as well, because there's always more things to do than the time we have available. And so if we do the things that we want to do first, they might not necessarily be the thing that's going to shift the dial to help us achieve the goals that will help us realize the vision. So it all is linked, which is why this is where I start. And so in terms of, so I actually I'm always interested in where the origin of words come from. So when we look at the idea of vision, It is literally the act of seeing. And we often associate seeing with our eyes, and having a certain amount of, but the other part of the definition is imaginative insight. That I really love, because it is not just about our physical vision and what we can physically see. Some people might see things in their mind eye. I'm quite a visual person. So when I see things, it's in pictures and it's kind of up here. For somebody else, it could be a feeling in their solar plexus. It could be on the skin. It's quite a sensory thing, which is why the process I go through for helping you discover your vision is quite sensory. But it's still important to figure out what that is for you, and to go through the steps to figure that out. And vision, we hear this a lot. I've worked in corporate. I had worked in corporate for many, many years. And there's always this, the vision of the company. I'm like, okay, well, that's good. Some have them, some don't. It's better to have a vision than not, because then you can test it as well. And that's also goes for life too. We can start to put goals and plans in place. And as we grow as humans, because that's the other thing too, the more inner work we do and the more outer steps we take, the more we grow and develop. And so things will change. So it's not saying you have to be wedded to that vision and it's never going to change. It will grow and develop. When I was in my early 20s, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get married and have children. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to have variety and all of that. Whereas now I'm married with a little girl, and I do travel still because I still love traveling. But I love our home and I love being in our home as well. We still go out and do things, but it's a different life to the one I envisaged when I was in my early 20s. So you have to grow and develop. And then the idea of retirement will probably change as I get closer to that age. So having an idea of where we're going just helps us figure out what we do and the decisions we make, and where we start or where we go from here. And also, when it comes to small business owners, it's also good to be clear on the business lifestyle that you want, as well as the personal lifestyle. So they are two separate identities to a certain extent, but they're two separate things. And the visions are a bit different as well. Like, for example, I've got a few pictures there that sort of denote what the differences are. And to be honest, the last few years of the pandemic have also challenged those ideas too. Do we want to go into an office where, we put on our sort of more business attire and we jump in the car or we jump on the train or the bus and off we go to an office? Do we want that? Or do we want to be able to work in a co-working environment with others where we sort of share business spaces? Or do we want to work from home? Or do you want to be able to work from anywhere in the world? You have your laptop sitting on your lap by the side of a pool somewhere in Bali. There's a lot of expats who co-work in places like Bali and Thailand and, you name it, around the world. Is that the kind of lifestyle that you want? Do you want to live on a boat and be able to work from there and have a satellite connection? It really, really is different now. There's so fewer barriers to being able to be mobile, but it's important to have an idea of what it is that you want, because otherwise your business is just going to feel heavy because you're like, this is not the environment that I want it to be in. And that then makes everything else heavier, and it stagnates the decision-making process and progress as well. And then the personal lifestyle too. How do you want your business to fund the personal lifestyle that you want? Do you eventually want to have a private jet? I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this gentleman has like 3 cars, a private jet, and a house on the beach, and another house. I was like, that just sounds like way too much to manage. I would much prefer to, I don't really have any desire to have a personal jet or 3 cars. Our household, we just have 1 car because that's fine. Otherwise, we'll use bicycles, because that's just kind of how we've evolved as a family. And I'd much prefer to just rent somewhere. I don't need to own things. So, but that's just me. So you have to figure out what's right for you. So then when it comes, again, this is just a little bit more about, the business lifestyle. So have a think about, and this is something you can write down as well. So what kind of business do you want? Why do you want it to be this way? And that'll also impact the business structure that you have too. And then how much money does your business need to make in order to fund the personal lifestyle that you want? And then you have to figure out what that is. Again, why you want it, because that's important too. Do you really want it, or is it somebody else's idea of it that you want what they want, kind of thing? And then again, how much money you're going to need, because they all have to blend in together. So this then brings me to the managing side of the finances. So the business finances, I work very much on what I call it the money pie. There's buckets. You can use like the Scott Pate, the Barefoot Investor, he uses buckets in his analogies. And then even if you've ever read, I can never remember the guy's last name, Michael, who wrote Profit First, he works on percentages, and I still work on percentages too, but I like the visual of the pie. And it's helping it do it in chunks, makes it a lot easier where you have your money kind of like earmarked for things. So you have an operating account where all your income comes in, or your revenue comes in, your expenses go out, and that's the operating account. Then you've got to make sure that you put money aside for tax, because you don't want to get in a position, and I've seen this happen with clients that have come to me. They're like, oh my gosh, I've got such a tax bill, it's going to take me years to pay it off. Accountants perhaps who haven't lodged tax returns or BASs, your business activity statements. It's just it really upsets me when I hear that, because that's the fundamental role of compliance, having come from a tax background, is to lodge those things. And I don't know how many tax returns I've lodged, and, fringe benefits tax returns, and you name it. So tax is a really important one, to make sure you put the right amount aside, put it in a separate account, because then you've got it covered. When you need to pay the bill, you're like, oh, that's all right, I got it right over here. I'm just going to take it out of that account and then pay the bill via BPay or however. So you don't have to take out any loans to pay it. You need to make sure you pay yourself as well. And this is where the concept of profit first comes in. So I could maneuver that around a bit, but I do think tax is still important. But you need to make sure you're paying yourself profit. That's the business profit. And that is separate from the salary that you pay yourself as an owner as well. So definitely, it's not like you make profit and then whatever's out of that is what you can take as a salary. You need to make sure that you're compensating yourself, because you're the business owner. Without you, it doesn't run. And even though it's your time, quite often, it still has value. And that comes back also to some of the stories that we tell ourselves and how much we charge as well. And this is where, when you look at, if you think about how much you pay yourself right now or not, how is the languaging in your mind going around, oh, I'm paying myself blah, because either that's what everybody else in the market is paying, or this is what I've always been comfortable charging. I have one client at the moment, and she's like, oh yeah, I don't want to charge anymore. And I was like, okay, that's perfectly okay. But just to make sure that you're aware of how much value you're giving and what the costs are to you as well, and making sure that you're charging your time. And I've had to learn this as well. I've had to go through, previously I would literally just charge the amount of time I would spend with a client, and the time would always go over anyway. And then I'd be doing all this extra work beforehand, preparing things. And I was originally, I pitched myself as a coach. And then when I spoke to a business coach about it, and they're like, you're not a coach, you're a consultant, because you actually do quite a lot for your clients. And I was like, oh yeah, that is actually true. But I was just so used to doing that, because previously as a management consultant, that's what I did. I built the structures, I created the processes, I organized and structured things and handed it over. And that's just what I'd always been used to doing. But when you're doing it one-on-one, you just I just made the assumption that it was coaching. And again, assumptions can be quite dangerous, and they link back to the stories and our perceptions as well. So start to really notice the languaging, the way you talk about money, the way you think about money. So it doesn't have to be the physical words coming out of your mouth, but the words that are going on in your head, they're just as important. And start to write them down. Call yourself on it. And if not, I actually had to call out a business mentor last week when she mentioned something about how she's greedy. And I was like, oh, no. Eliminate that sort of languaging from your world and go, okay, well, what am I doing? If I'm genuinely adding value and I'm genuinely concerned about serving my customer and making sure they get the most out of it, and that you can almost have a return on investment on what they're paying you, there's no greed involved in that. That's a value exchange. And it's something that as women, we often, because we tend to give and have lesser expectations of what comes back. But when it comes to business, the only way you can scale and grow is if you charge your worth, and then you can go out and amplify that impact. Because if you're not paying yourself, you can't go and do that. You can't afford to then advertise if you need to, or go to events, or take on staff, or do the things that you need to do to be able to grow. So it's very important to be able to do that. And keep that in mind with how you're managing your cash flow as well. And if you have them allocated this way, then it's a lot easier to do. So you have a percentage of revenue. So this is all based on the revenue that you earn each month. And then you put that amount into your personal bank account for your owner's compensation or your salary. And then you put the 5% or whatever percent. It could start with 1% even. As long as you're paying it, doesn't matter, even if it's small. And then you put that amount into a profit account. And then you can see it grow as well. And then it's also important to have what I call a holding account, or any potential excess profit. And sometimes that goes for bills that just either have gone higher than you've anticipated, are in addition to what you've budgeted or forecast for, It's good to have a little bit of a buffer in your business space. And we'll talk about that a bit more in the personal as well. But having that there. And once you have that structure there, it makes managing it a lot easier. And I use Excel to manage it. You can use Google Sheets. You can use whatever tool you want. You can even work with a bookkeeper so that they can structure it, that information kind of comes out of an accounting system if you're using that into a spreadsheet. I do find spreadsheets are better for this sort of thing because the way accounting systems work is they're designed to help you lodge a tax return or a BAS. They're not necessarily designed to help you manage your bank accounts and your business or your cash flow. And even if they do, then business cash flow, you still need a methodology similar to this, which I'll go through in a moment, to manage your personal finances and how all that works. And what it also does is give you transparency and visibility over your finances to the extent that you can make better decisions. You can start to see trends. You can go, oh, okay, I see this month really goes up. I need to make sure that I'm, promoting more in that month. Or what is it that people are buying? Which product or services is really working? Because I need to do more of that. And it gives you the information to be able to make decisions. And it's more than just knowing your numbers. Numbers is part of it, but it's also getting a feel for how your business is impacting the lives of others. And you can then do more of that so that you can serve your clients better. So that's the purpose behind the structure. And like I said, I do it in Excel. But I have the advantage of being able to run Excel. If you need somebody to set it up for you, you can do that. Or you can just start to have a play yourself and just pull the money out or pull the information out and put it into, you could even do it on paper to start with. I have whiteboards. When I started to do this and I was mapping it out for myself, I did it on a whiteboard. And then I was like, okay, it's now too complex for a whiteboard. I need to put it into Excel. And the beauty with that is it auto calculates once you put the formulas in. So the important part about this is the shift in the mindset around just going from money's hard, I can't do it, I'm just not good at money, or I'm not good at math, which is another reason why I'm wearing my calculator earrings. Nearly every business owner that I have spoken to says that they're not good at maths. And when I look at what they've achieved and how they've achieved it, I was like, you've just disproved all that already. But because our brains are wired for survival, and survival based on what we know has kept us alive in the past, so the familiar, we will keep repeating these stories over and over again because they're familiar, and we know that the familiar has kept us alive. What we're doing here is challenging those stories, but doing it in a way that it doesn't threaten our sense of survival. Because what if we try, it's a little bit like an analogy where if you're going to quit smoking, doing it cold turkey just puts the body in shock. I had a cousin many years ago who, when she was pregnant, she was a chain smoker and she fell pregnant. And the doctor actually said to her, it's going to be more damaging to your body to just stone cold stop smoking than if it is to just cut down. Just cut down a little bit every day to the point where you've then stopped. And then, obviously managing the health of the babies in this case, because she had twins, was paramount. But it was little by little, because our bodies don't like massive change all at once. There's a reason why our brains shut down when we are in a major accident, because our brains just go, yep, that's it. This could kill us. We'll go into shock, and we'll just black out. And then that way we'll protect our brains. So the same thing happens. We just don't think about it, because day to day we do what we normally do because we're habitual creatures, and we just need to also then challenge those habits, but step by step. Personal finances, again, like I said at the beginning, the approach or the process to do this is very similar. So that's why the concept of holistically managing your finances came about, because the theory behind managing your business finances is also the same as managing your personal finances. And I even have spreadsheets I use for clients, which are almost identical. The content is different, but the actual structure is almost exactly the same, because you want to be able to have the same level of information, and you're managing it with pie slices. Again, it's just in this case, the pie slices are different because as individuals, we have expenses and debt as well. So expenses are our day-to-day living. Debt is any kind of loan that we've taken, whether it's on a home, on a car, other personal loans, buy now, pay later, all of that is debt. And our expenses are everything else, like groceries, fuel, mobile phones, unless your business is paying for that, car, again, unless your business is paying for that, and kids, all that sort of stuff. which is why I have a pie slice for kids, because in this particular case for me, I have one for my daughter in the future if she ever wants to do tertiary study or anything else. It's just kind of there as an option. So, and this is where also when, as a business owner, income fluctuates. So that percentage that we had in the previous slide, so that 20%, which is salary, that amount will fluctuate every month. So you can either do that as a percentage of revenue, or you can try and steady it out. That's another option where you can go, okay, well, if I look at the average over the year, on average, each month, it's say $5,000. All right. So I'm now going to, instead of fluctuating at 3,000 one month, 4,000 another, 5, 6, or whatever it is, I'm just going to steady it out at $5,000 a month. That way, it actually makes it a lot easier to manage your personal finances when you've got that steady income. And the account that you can put it in your, you can put it in a separate bank account with your business. And then some months when it's lower, you can dig into it. The other months where it's higher, you leave it there, but you just pay yourself a steady amount every month to help you pay everything else. And then from that, you calculate what expenses do you have, and you have to do the numbers to make sure that that $5,000 or whatever it is can actually sustain your lifestyle, which again, important to understand what lifestyle you want. Then emergencies, I've actually started changing this to the word buffer, to be honest, because the word emergencies just felt, I don't know, it just didn't work as well for me. So I've actually changed that to buffer, but whatever works for you. Always have money in a fund. I actually call mine travel and photography. Well, actually used to be called travel. Now it's just called travel because I have all the photographic equipment that I could ever want. So I don't need to buy any more. So now it's just for travel, but you can just have it as fun in general. So that could be traveling. It could be going to the theater. It could be going to the like Cirque du Soleil or other performances and things like that. So whatever is fun, or going out for fancy meals. I'm not talking about day-to-day, groceries and eating, but if you want to go out for a really nice dinner every now and then, you've got money set aside in a separate account for that. So you don't have to feel guilty. So fun. And then a car, if you want to save for a new car. I'm not a fan of taking out loans to buy cars. We recently, I had my last car for 20 years. And towards the end, last 2 years of the car's life, I thought, oh, at some point this is going to, it was already a 2-year-old car when I bought it. So I was like, this is a 20-year-old car. In a couple of years, it might start to fade. So I started putting money into a bank account to save for the car. And sure enough, and I'd actually allocated in my mind, it's like, oh, if I take 2 years, I'll get to the goal of around the amount of money that I want to spend on a car. Well, it's funny how plans work. Literally 2 years later, the car died. And it was going to cost way too much to repair. So I was like, oh no, we'll just have to say goodbye to this now 22-year-old car, and bought another newish secondhand car. And it was really, really interesting how I allocated 2 years and it actually took 2 years. It's funny how plans work. But then what happened is once we'd actually bought the car, I was in like, well, I don't want that money to just fizzle away now. So I'm going to have to shift that into another pie slice. So just because it's a lot easier to save money when you have a target and you have a goal for that money. Otherwise, it'll just disappear. It's a bit of a mystery to me as to how easily that happens, but it does. You could say for kids' futures, again, if it's private schools or tertiary or helping them with the down payment on a house when they're older, whatever it happens to be, that's, again, it's a choice. And then you can choose to invest. So superannuation is something that should already be taken care of through your business, and making sure you pay yourself an adequate amount of super. You may want to top it up with this. So that invest one could be super top up, or it could be investing alongside your super. It's very important for women in particular to have an appropriate amount of super, because quite often we take time out to have children. We often are in more lower paid jobs, partly also because even if we do take time off, when we come back into the workforce, we work part-time. So we're not going to earn as much, which means our super is lower. So it's very important to make sure that you're investing and or super, like preferably both. But if you can't manage both, just do focus on one of them, and make sure that you start to build that up. And making sure you just have one super fund as well. So many clients have had multiples, and we're like, oh dear, there's money all over the place, fees all over the place, insurances, multiple insurances in the multiple super funds. So it's important to clean that up too. And then at the end of every month, you can calculate the amounts, and then you can have those go off into your accounts. So you see, and that amount then becomes a lot easier to automate, which I'll go through shortly, if it's a steady income amount that's coming out of your business. So I'm hoping this is all making sense so far. If not, please interrupt and ask questions. But like I said, I do have time for Q&A at the end. Systems. Systems is a good one, because if we're trying to simplify, we're going to try and use technology, or at least processes and systems, as much as possible, so that we don't have to think about some of the more repetitive tasks. We can just let them happen, and then we can focus on the things that we actually have to make active decisions and take action on. So when I talk about systems, I'm talking about repetitive processes, like I said, that have a particular objective. So for instance, like I said, setting up a spreadsheet to manage the pie slices and making sure you've listed out your revenue or your income and expenses, and have that. And you spend a little bit of time every month updating it to make sure that you've got a clear view of what you're spending. Have a system in place. You can put, I have reminders in my phone in May every year to go, do I want to put any extra into my super fund? Some years is yes, some years might be no, depending on the kind of year I've had. And then I'll be like, okay, now I need to do that. So you can use technology to remind you to do things. I use a project management tool, and I have some repetitive monthly tasks I need to do. So I have them in there every month, and then I get an email to remind me, oh, this is coming due. And then once I've done it, I then set it up for the next month. So it just keeps rolling. So it just helps you run things more efficiently. And again, you can focus on the stuff that you actually want to focus on, rather than spending all this time trying to just figure out every month, oh, what do I need to do now? What do I need to do now? It's set out. You do the same thing repetitively every month. And then again, why to have a system? Provides that consistency so that you know what you're doing, and you can get information that you can make decisions on. And it gives you, again, more clarity, so that you then have the ability to scale, and you can get staff in, because once you have stuff like in a process documented, you can then hire a VA, or you can hire an assistant of some sort, or anyone else, and go, or even a bookkeeper to a certain extent, and just go, can you please do this for me? And because it's documented clearly, and you say, this is what needs to happen, they don't have to figure it out, and you're not paying them to figure it out. You're just paying them to do it. And that just also lessens the cost for you as well. And it creates clarity too, because when you've got an assistant helping you, the worst thing in the world is for them to sit there just going, I don't really know what she expects of me, or what am I meant to do? And time ticks away. And A, they haven't done it, and B, they've charged you for it. So it's a lot easier when you have that system in place. And even the way you do like leads, like you generate leads or get new business in the door. I now have all of my product launches sort of systemized in the project management software, which I can share with team. How you do your marketing, your payroll, your operations, monthly invoicing, all of that. You can systemize a lot of that. It doesn't have to take a lot of your time. And softwares, like I said, will help you do a lot of this. Like there's accounting softwares. You can link them to your website sales. So it all just kind of sucks the information in, puts it there at the end of the month. The accounting system will tell you what you need to, it'll pretty much spit out your BAS. It will spit out what your tax accountant needs to do your tax return. It just makes it a lot easier. Task management software, I use Trello. I used to use it years ago as a management consultant, and I tried to use a few others for my business when I started, because I was like, oh, that was for corporate, but I didn't like them. So I've just gone back to Trello. And I love it. It just suits the way my brain works. You can use social media scheduling software. There's some paid ones like Later out there. I just use the free like Facebook business version, because it allows me to do everything I need to do, and I don't have to pay for it. But automation, and it just helps you to simplify and automate as much as possible in your business, so that you can focus on what you love to do. And then, so the processes, again, they're in our heads. Quite often as business owners, we know how we want things done, and it just makes it a lot easier if we can get it out of our heads onto the page or into a document that we can just replicate and give to others. And it creates clarity of expectations as well. So while it does take a little bit of effort and time up front, it's better just get it out, document it. It doesn't have to look pretty. There are services out there that will help you do this as well if you don't want to do it yourself. I met a lady, it's a couple of months ago now, and what she does is she actually sits with a business owner. They blurt out all the information, and she just puts it in a nice and neat procedure, which she gives back to you, and you can then hand out. So you can even outsource the creation of systems and processes as well. But it then just makes, again, it improves how things flow. It makes you more professional too, and it just makes life a lot easier. So when you're looking, and the one caution I do have about systems is there are a lot out there. When I first started, I was just amazed at how many. I was like, oh, I need this, and I need this, and I need this to link to this. And there's even a company called Zapier, or Zapier, I don't know how to pronounce it, where you can connect different things. It's like, so I've got a separate application to connect all these other applications. That's just starting to blow my mind. And I like simple. So I actually do like a systems audit to try and streamline this. And you can you can see the bills. So once you've got an annual looking budget, you can actually start to see all the systems that you've got as well. So it actually makes the review process even easier, because already this year I was like, okay, well, I have this software to help me do this with captions. I have this one that lets me do captions and edit. I was like, well, I don't need the other one for captions anymore, because this one does captions too. So I was like, well, I can just get rid of one. And it's not just the cost is part of it, but it's also the complexity of having to log into so many different things and think about which software does what, and it just gets overwhelming. So it's so then identifying the systems you already have. Like I said, if you have an annual budget, that's there. So you can then just review it. You only have to list them out once. And then you assess whether or not you use them to their capacity. So sometimes you might have bought, like there's often different levels. In a lot of the applications, you can go, well, do I actually use all the features of this level? Do I need that level, or do I need this level? In one particular case, I actually had to up level one of my systems, because the way I wanted to use it with another system that I was linking it to, it needed the higher level. So I was like, okay, all right, I'll take that. And then you can reduce them if you need to. Like I said, I've done that recently as well. And again, you can choose an annual time of year to do that if you want, and you can just put a reminder in your calendar and go, I'm just going to set aside an hour in my schedule and do that. And then I'm just going to focus on that. It's done. Then I can move on to something else, and I can free up the mind space that takes, because that is space that you could use for so many other things that will actually help you make more money in your business. Then how many bank accounts as well? I know what I showed before, you do add a few more bank accounts, but I've got one client at the moment, actually, so many bank accounts. It just is overwhelming. They don't know where their money's going, because it's just, there's a little bit here and a little bit there, a little bit. And I was like, can some of those be consolidated and used for this? And it's just, there's a lot. So how many do you actually need? To be honest, more than 5 for each is too many. Even then it adds up to about 10 business account, or 10 accounts, 5 for business, 5 for personal. But if you can see 10, anything more than that starts to become a bit too much for our brains to process. And then you can start to use what I call the money pie to allocate to each of the accounts. And then it just all starts to flow. You get in this rhythm every month. And then you've got the information in historical months to be able to make future decisions in future months. And it all starts to come together. So being able to automate and outsource. I've heard so much about outsourcing lately. Literally 2 podcasts I was listening to yesterday were both about buying back your time. And I thought, well, sometimes it's easier said than done, but you do have to set yourself up to do it. So I've given some ideas here on how to go about doing that. So for business, again, you can have software, either the software you use to run your business or your accounting software. Either one can send out invoices automatically. You don't have to do that yourself. You can even outsource some content creation. You can get a VA to help. You can create like one form of content, and they can make it work in lots of different areas. You can record a video interview. They can turn it into a podcast and into multiple social posts, into a story, into a reel. You can do snippets. So many different options for doing that, but just multiplying the use of the content that you're using. And then you can get reports. Admittedly, I find some of the reports out of the various accounting softwares a bit blah, but you could always work with your accountant to try and find ones that are worthwhile. I end up just using my cash flow worksheets that I've created, because I find it a lot more useful to get an idea of what your monthly cash flow and profit position is. From a personal standpoint, like I said, you can automate that saving into a high interest bank account for each, like your fund, your invest fund even, and you can just set a certain amount every month, and it just comes straight out of your everyday account, and it just goes at the same day every month, and you can monitor which day of the month will work best. And you can also do that with super contributions. You can automate increasing super contributions. You could do it on a monthly basis. You could do it on an annual basis. Again, the important thing is to do it. And then again, micro investing has opened up the ball of investing so much. There are different platforms out there. I personally use one called Raise, because it allows me to round up. So I used the roundup function solely for about 5 years and got to about $5,000 just by doing roundups. I linked my bank account and my credit card to it. and it just ticked away. It invested the round-up amounts, which were literally cents. It pools it, and then it just grows. And now I've just automated an extra $10 a month because I was curious to see what would happen. And it jumped from 5,000 to 6,000 within 6 months. Took me 5 years to get to 5,000 and then 6 months to jump another 1,000. So the compounding impact is tremendous. But again, you've got to do it. So micro investing apps are a really good way to at least just incrementally do little things and just set yourself up in different ways to help you build your wealth and to get to that lifestyle. So again, I have been weaving this into what I've gone through today, but it's steps. It's bit by bit, doing one thing, having the goal and having the process or the plan to go with it. But you don't have to have everything set out all in one go. You just need to know that one next step. And then from there, you'll gather more information, have more experiences to be able to make a decision on what that next step is. And you get there bit by bit. And then the other important part is, even before you get to the goal, is to stop on one of those steps, turn around and look at what you've achieved so far. We often don't do that retrospective, and all we see is the gap in front of us. We don't realize how far we've actually come. There's a really good book called The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan. Brilliant book if you need some motivational reading and some actual genuine information on how to do that really well. I loved that book. So again, focus on the process you're going through and the steps bit by bit. Do a review every 6 to 12 months on making sure that you're still headed in the right direction, but don't get so consumed about the direction that it stops you from doing anything, because ultimately the best thing to do is to do something, because then you'll know what either does or doesn't work, what you do or don't want, and then you can make better decisions once you have that information. I love this one. You only fail if you quit. So you'll have new habits, beliefs, stories, and if you believe in yourself, you keep going. Your why will keep you going, and then it will only actually fail if you quit. And you don't know, it's a tipping point. You don't know how close you are to that tipping point. So you keep going. So with all of that in mind, I did want to mention how, if you are interested in how to progress, if you want to, something that I have created about 6 months ago was the Enriched Life Club. And I'll just go into a little bit more about what's included. So we do, when you first sign up, there's a discovery call. So there's a one-on-one discussion where I show you how to use it, where to go, where to start, what information is important to you right now to make sure I target you to that particular area, because there is a wealth of information that's already in there. I do a monthly masterclass. I'll be bringing in some experts to do bonus sessions based on what members want. There's tools and resources in there. So there's the spreadsheets that I told you about are in there. I've got calculators, there's workbooks, there's a lifestyle visioning process that I go through that's in there as well. There's monthly accountability. If you want to be held accountable, not everybody wants it, but it's there if you do. And then there's a community where you can ask questions, reach out, share wins, ask if something's just not working, brainstorm, all of that. That's available in there as well. So the pricing of it, there's a monthly fee. It is going up from tomorrow. And then there's an annual fee as well, which is obviously a lot more cost effective. You get 2 months free in that. There is no look-in contract. I don't want people to feel like they can't leave, or that, that's, if it's just not, because you don't often know how things are going to go or how your life's going to go as well. So I've deliberately made it as simple as possible. And there's a couple of other bonuses at the moment as well, including a values discovery session with me, and the financial wellness for busy women is a series of checklists to actually help you go, what do I need to do? And I've broken it down into, if you only have 5 minutes, this is what you can do. If you've only got 5 minutes, you can check off one of these things. If you've got 30 minutes, here's something that you can do, and you can check things off, and it actually helps you. And this is for life as well. So it includes some estate planning stuff too. And then some things that take a bit longer than 30 minutes, but it's a series of checklists. So that's included as well. So I'll just recap what we went through. So we looked at vision and clarity, and how to actually, the importance of making sure that you have that clarity and that you know where you're going and the kind of lifestyle that you want. And then how to look at managing your business finances and aligning it to your personal finances, so the two are linked and they're connected up to that ultimate vision that you want for both your business and your life. And then ways to simplify and automate as much as possible. And there's also ideas on outsourcing there as well. So any questions? 5. muted everybody. Cool. Like I said, if you don't feel comfortable asking any questions now, you can DM me later. I even offer a free clarity chat as well if you wanted to have a one-on-one discussion too. So that's another option as well. So I hope that was useful and that it, I know there was a lot there. Hopefully it's at least giving you an clarity on at least the next step of what you want to do and how you want to do it. And I'll just put a few things up here. So this is, if you haven't already, there's a number of different ways to get in touch with me and to follow what I do. I post content quite regularly on Instagram and Facebook as well. So make sure you're following me if you'd like to get access to that. I do some videos, some static content too. So I'm just going to stop the recording and open up. Where are we?